I just love the sound of an electric guitar. Simply focused, the essence of it all for me.
I wanted to try and incorporate, as well as electric guitar playing.
The world of rock music is filled with countless stories of legendary musicians, their rise to fame, and the relationships they forge along the way. Among these tales, few have captured the imagination of fans and music historians alike, quite like the complex and often tumultuous relationship between Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page. For decades, the two guitar icons have been the subject of endless fascination and speculation, their intertwined histories and musical legacies the stuff of rock and roll mythology. But now, after years of silence and secrecy, Eric Clapton has finally opened up about his true feelings toward Jimmy Page. In a series of candid interviews and public statements, Clapton has shed new light on the ups and downs of their relationship, offering a rare glimpse into the personal lives and creative rivalries of two of the most influential guitarists of all time. Early days in London's music scene. To truly understand the significance of Clapton's revelations, one must first go back to the early days of the 1960s, when the two guitarists were just beginning to make their mark on the London music scene. At the time, the city was a hotbed of musical innovation and creativity, with young musicians from all walks of life converging on the clubs and studios of Soho and Kensington to forge a new sound that would come to define an entire generation. Among these pioneering artists were Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page, two gifted guitarists who quickly established themselves as forces to be reckoned with. Clapton, born in 1945, had first risen to prominence as a member of the Yardbirds, a blues-influenced rock band that would go on to launch the careers of several other legendary guitarists, including Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page himself. But it was with his next band, John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers, that Clapton truly came into his own as a guitarist. His searing solos and emotive playing style set a new standard for rock guitar, earning him the nickname God among his peers and fans alike. Meanwhile, Jimmy Page was making a name for himself as a highly sought-after session musician, playing on recordings for a wide range of artists, from The Who and the Kinks to Shirley Bassey and Donovan. Page's versatility and innovative playing style made him a go-to guitarist for producers and musicians alike, and it wasn't long before he crossed paths with Clapton in the tight-knit London music scene. At first, the two guitarists had a cordial relationship, bonding over their shared love of the blues and their mutual admiration for each other's playing. They would often find themselves at the same gigs and recording sessions, trading licks and ideas in a spirit of friendly competition and camaraderie. But as their careers began to take off in different directions, the relationship between Clapton and Page would become increasingly complicated, marked by creative tensions, personal rivalries, and a lingering sense of unfinished business. The controversial jam session tapes. One of the defining moments in the relationship between Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page came in the mid-1960s, when the two guitarists began jamming together in private, informal sessions. These sessions were a chance for the two musicians to experiment with new sounds and techniques, away from the pressures of the studio or the stage. They would often record these jams on tape, capturing the raw energy and creativity of their playing. But these recordings would eventually become a source of controversy and tension between Clapton and Page after they were taken without their consent and released to the public. The tapes in question had been recorded during a series of sessions at Clapton's London apartment in 1965, where he and Page had been experimenting with new sounds and techniques. But unbeknownst to the two guitarists, their manager at the time, Andrew Oldham, had gotten hold of the recordings and saw an opportunity to capitalize on their growing fame. Without Clapton or Page's knowledge or consent, Oldham took the tapes and began altering them, adding overdubs and other effects to create a more polished sound. He then released the recordings to the public, billing them as a rare glimpse into the private world of two of the most exciting young guitarists in London. When Clapton found out about the release of the tapes, he was furious. He felt that his trust had been betrayed and that his artistic integrity had been compromised. Page, too, was unhappy with the situation. but he was less vocal about his disappointment. For Clapton, the incident marked a turning point in his relationship with Page and would have lasting repercussions for their future collaborations and interactions. In his mind, Page had betrayed his trust and violated the unspoken code of honor among musicians, a betrayal that would color their relationship for years to come. The fallout and distant years. In the aftermath of the controversial jam session tapes, the relationship between Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page became increasingly strained. Though they would continue to cross paths in the years that followed, the easy camaraderie and mutual admiration of their early days was gone, replaced by a sense of tension and mistrust. Part of the problem was that Clapton and Page were now moving in different circles and pursuing different musical paths. Clapton had left the Yardbirds and formed the supergroup Cream, which quickly became one of the most popular and influential bands of the late 1960s. With his virtuosic playing and soulful vocals, Clapton was cementing his status as one of the greatest guitarists of his generation. Page, meanwhile, had joined the Yardbirds himself, replacing Clapton as the band's lead guitarist. But by 1968, the Yardbirds were on their last legs, and Page was looking for a new project to sink his teeth into. He soon formed a new band, originally called the New Yardbirds, which would eventually morph into the legendary rock group Led Zeppelin. As Clapton and Page pursued their separate paths, they continued to make music that would define a generation and shape the course of rock history. Clapton's work with Cream, Blind Faith, and Derek and the Dominos cemented his status as a guitar god and blues legend, while Page's innovative playing and songwriting with Led Zeppelin redefined what was possible with hard rock and heavy metal. Despite their individual successes, however, the relationship between Clapton and Page remained strained throughout the 1970s. They would occasionally find themselves at the same events or festivals, but they rarely spoke or interacted with each other. For fans and music journalists, the tension between the two guitarists became a topic of endless fascination and speculation. The 1983 Ronnie Lane benefit concert. It wasn't until 1983 that Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page would finally share the stage again at a benefit concert for former Faces bassist Ronnie Lane, who had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. The concert, held at the Royal Albert Hall in London, brought together a who's who of British rock royalty, including Jeff Beck, Bill Wyman, and Charlie Watts. When Clapton and Page took the stage together that night, the atmosphere was electric. Fans had been waiting for this moment for years, and the anticipation was palpable. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the old camaraderie between the two guitarists had been rekindled as they traded solos and riffs with the same fire and intensity that had made them legends in the first place. But backstage, the tension between Clapton and Page was still evident. Though they put on a good show for the audience, there was a palpable sense of unease between them, a feeling that the wounds of the past had not fully healed. In interviews at the time, Clapton was guarded in his comments about Page, while Page seemed to avoid the subject altogether. Clapton's revelations. Now, nearly 4 decades after the Ronnie Lane concert, Eric Clapton has finally broken his silence about his true feelings towards Jimmy Page. In a series of interviews and public statements, Clapton has opened up about the complex history between the two guitarists, offering a rare glimpse into the personal and professional rivalries that have defined their relationship for so long. Clapton's revelations are both candid and revealing, shedding new light on a story that has long been shrouded in mystery and speculation. He speaks openly about the sense of betrayal he felt when the controversial jam session tapes were released without his consent, and how that incident changed the nature of his relationship with Page forever. At the same time, Clapton is quick to acknowledge the immense talent and influence of Jimmy Page, speaking with admiration about his innovative guitar playing and groundbreaking work with Led Zeppelin. He also reflects on the ways in which his own music was shaped and inspired by Page's example, even as their personal relationship became more distant and strained. Perhaps most notably, Clapton's revelations suggest a sense of closure and acceptance that has been a long time coming. After years of tension and mistrust, he seems to have made peace with the past and with his own role in the complex history between himself and Page. The duo's legacy. In the end, the story of Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page is one of two musicians whose contributions to the world of rock and roll are almost impossible to overstate. Between them, they have sold hundreds of millions of records, inspired countless imitators and acolytes, and left an indelible mark on the history of popular music. Their legacies are intertwined in ways that go beyond their personal rivalries and differences. Both men were instrumental in shaping the sound and style of rock music in the 1960s and 70s, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with the electric guitar and creating a blueprint for generations of musicians to come. Clapton's work with Cream, Blind Faith, and Derek and the Dominoes expanded the vocabulary of the blues and laid the groundwork for the emergence of hard rock and heavy metal. His soulful, emotive playing style and virtuosic technique set a new standard for rock guitar, and his influence can be heard in the work of countless guitarists who followed in his footsteps. Page, meanwhile, was a true innovator, a guitarist who brought a new level of sophistication and experimentation to rock music. With Led Zeppelin, he created a sound that was both heavy and intricate, combining the raw power of the blues with the complex harmonies and rhythms of folk and classical music. His playing was a revelation, a virtuosic display of technique and imagination that expanded the possibilities of the electric guitar and inspired a generation of musicians to push the boundaries of what was possible. Together, Clapton and Page represent the pinnacle of rock guitar, two musicians whose contributions to the art form are almost impossible to overstate. Their influence can be heard in the work of countless guitarists and bands, from the classic rock of the 1970s to the heavy metal and hard rock of the 1980s and beyond. Reflections on personal rivalries. While the musical legacies of Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page are undeniable, their story is also one of personal rivalry and tension. The two guitarists were not just musical collaborators but also competitors, each striving to outdo the other and claim their place at the top of the rock and roll hierarchy. This rivalry was fueled in part by their different personalities and approaches to music. Clapton was the consummate bluesman, a purist who saw himself as a guardian of the genre's traditions. He was also a deeply emotional player, pouring his heart and soul into every note he played. Page, on the other hand, was a musical chameleon, a guitarist who drew on a wide range of influences and styles to create something entirely new. He was also a showman, a larger-than-life figure who reveled in the excesses and indulgences of the rock and roll lifestyle. These differences in style and temperament would come to a head in the years following the release of the controversial jam session tapes. Clapton felt betrayed by what he saw as Page's lack of respect for his privacy and artistic integrity, while Page may have viewed Clapton's anger as an overreaction. As the two guitarists pursued their separate careers, their rivalry took on a life of its own, fueled by rumors and speculation in the music press. Fans and critics alike wondered what had really happened between the two men, and whether they would ever be able to put their differences aside and work together again. Clapton's recent revelations offer a new perspective on this long-standing rivalry. While he acknowledges the tension and mistrust that characterized his relationship with Page for many years, he also seems to have reached a place of acceptance and understanding. He recognizes that both he and Page were young men at the time, driven by their own egos and ambitions, and that the pressures of fame and success can take a toll on even the strongest of friendships. Personal growth and reflection. In the years since their falling out, both Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page have undergone significant personal and artistic growth. Clapton has battled addiction and personal tragedy, losing his young son in a tragic accident in 1991. He has also continued to evolve as a musician, exploring new genres and collaborations while remaining true to his blues roots. Page, meanwhile, has become an elder statesman of rock, a legendary figure whose influence can be felt in countless bands and genres. He has also faced his own personal challenges, including a long battle with addiction and health issues. Perhaps it is this shared experience of struggle and growth that has allowed Clapton and Page to finally put their differences aside. In his recent interviews, Clapton speaks of Page with a new sense of empathy and understanding, recognizing the toll that fame and success can take on even the most talented and driven of individuals. He also reflects on his own role in their falling out, acknowledging that he may have been too quick to judge Page and too unwilling to see things from his perspective. This newfound introspection and self-awareness is a testament to Clapton's own personal growth and maturity, and a reminder that even the most bitter of rivalries can be healed with time and understanding. Fittingly, Clapton's revelations come at a time when both he and Page are entering the twilight of their careers. While they may never recapture the raw energy and intensity of their early years, they remain two of the most influential and respected guitarists in the history of rock music. Their story serves as a reminder of the enduring power of music to both unite and divide us, to create bonds of friendship and rivalry that can last a lifetime. It is a story of two men who changed the face of rock and roll, whose legacies will endure long after they are gone. The relationship between Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page is one of the great unsung stories in the history of rock and roll. For decades, the two guitarists have been the subject of endless fascination and speculation, their personal and professional rivalries the stuff of legend among fans and music historians alike. Now, with Clapton's recent revelations, we have a new understanding of the complex history between these two iconic musicians. We can see the ways in which their relationship was shaped by the pressures of fame and success, the creative tensions and personal differences that drove them apart, even as their musical legacies became more and more intertwined. At the same time, we can appreciate the immense talent and influence of both men, the ways in which their contributions to rock music have shaped the course of popular culture and inspired countless musicians to follow in their footsteps. In the end, the story of Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page is a reminder of the enduring power of music to bring people together and tear them apart, to create bonds of friendship and rivalry that can last a lifetime. It is a story of two men who changed the face of rock and roll, whose legacies will endure long after they are gone. As fans and music lovers, we can only marvel at the incredible music that Clapton and Page have created over the years, and the ways in which their relationship has added to the richness and complexity of their art. And we can hope that, in the end, the two guitarists will find a way to reconcile their differences and come together once again, in celebration of the music that has meant so much to so many for so long.